Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, after a break in our discussion of the doubts around the Da'wah Salafiyya al-Mubarakah, we return back to this important series. And in this part 17, we look at some of the doubts that have been presented by a young, enthusiastic YouTuber, and one that has become popular upon social media in recent times, an individual that goes by the name of Muhammad Hijāb al-Masri. Muhammad Hijāb is one whose videos have begun to spread on YouTube. The videos of him giving da'wah in Hyde Park in London, and some of the videos of him debating atheists and what have you. Those who, from our brothers who have been giving da'wah in Hyde Park for many years, have observed in the da'wah of Muhammad Hijāb that which raises concerns, and that is that the da'wah of Muhammad Hijāb has a number of oppositions to the call of the prophets and the messengers in giving da'wah to Allah. Though it may entertain certain individuals, and though it may utilize a number of concepts that may be new to some of his followers, in actuality the call is one that opposes the call of the prophets and the messengers. And thus, our brothers have approached Muhammad Hijāb in order to advise him concerning this. They advised him concerning his utilization of philosophy in da'wah, and they advised him concerning his utilization and his huge reliance upon opinion. And the advice that these brothers have given to him was received in actuality with, for the most part, rejection. And that rejection turned to a smear campaign against those who advised this individual, intending nothing but good, of course. And so what we saw issue after the advice of our brothers was that Muhammad Hijāb, he embarked upon a venomous campaign to attempt to paint his advisors in an extremely bad light. In the initial stages, he was accompanied by Ali Dawah. It appears that Ali Dawah has now taken a back seat in the affair. From the things that our brothers have advised him concerning were issues related to Aqeedah, in particular his attempt to establish the presence and the wujud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by way of using philosophical means and philosophical rhetoric. Similarly, that which is related to his methodology and his manhaj as it relates to the various groups and parties and sects among the Muslimin, and other affairs that they advised Muhammad concerning. And as we mentioned, his advice, or these pieces of advice, were met with animosity that grew and became this venomous plight that we now see Muhammad Hijāb embarking upon against the people of Salafiyya in the West. So we want to look at some of the issues in relation to Muhammad Hijāb. What were the problems that our brothers observed? What is it that they advised him with? And how he responded to that advice. In this session, then, we want to mention generally some of the issues related to him, and then in the parts that will come, we'll look at some of the details, inshallah. Over the past few months, we've seen many faces of Muhammad Hijāb. We've seen Muhammad Hijāb, the philosopher. We've seen Muhammad Hijāb, the journalist. We've seen Muhammad Hijāb, the rights campaigner. And we've seen many instances of Muhammad Hijāb, the court jester. When it comes, ikhwan, to the Aqeedah al-Islamiyya, then it is important and imperative that we are concerned with ensuring that the correct Islamic Aqeedah and the correct Islamic belief is what is spread among the awsat, or the ranks of the Muslimin. Since the da'wah of Muhammad Hijāb revolves around social media, then of course he is very concerned with keeping up appearances with his followers. And so when those videos began to spread of him being given da'wah and of him getting or receiving advice, those videos that were taped by individuals, of course, who were bystanders, when those videos began to spread, when those videos became viral, then, of course, Muhammad Hijāb, he saw that as a threat to his character and a threat to this knowledgeable persona that he wishes for his followers to have of him. Yes, he mentions that I'm just a layman, but then he does exactly what a layman should not do, and that is that he stands up against the people of Sunnah in relation to issues that he doesn't truly understand and issues that are new to him. And he confuses issues related to the Aqidah and the approach to understanding the Deen and other most important and very dangerous issues that shouldn't be embarked upon except by one that truly understands what it is he's saying. What is observed from Muhammad Hijāb, though, is the contrary, that Muhammad Hijāb, if he were present among the Salaf of this Ummah, then he would be referred to by the scholars of Hadith as Hatib Layl. Hatib Layl was a title that the scholars of Hadith would give to an individual that was not a praiseworthy title. Hatib Layl, if roughly translated, would indicate and mean a person who gathers firewood by night. The reason it was blameworthy is because any individual that gathers firewood by night, one of the things that he's going to gather, or from the things that he's going to gather, is that alongside some pieces of firewood that he may be able to use, he's going to gather a load of what can only be described as rubbish. Twigs that may not be burnable, plastic, wrappers, lumps of soil that he may have, or concrete that he may have thought was something that was burnable material, and other than that, from things that are useless. And so the scholars of Hadith used to refer to an individual who takes his knowledge and takes Hadith from any source and from any individual and anyone that he is or he considers has something to benefit him. They would refer to them as Hatib Layl. Not only is Muhammad Hijāb from them, from those who gather firewood by night, but it is that, and it is very characteristic that he encourages his followers to be upon. In fact, he speaks against being staunch when it comes to following the Sunnah and only taking from correct sources and only taking from that which is authentic. And he refers to this as being an echo chamber and a bubble, that we need to get outside of this box and outside of this bubble and take and benefit from other individuals, because, it is almost as though he's saying the diversity that is present within this ummah must be celebrated. And we shouldn't, keep ourselves in blinkers, so to speak. And so our brothers advised him on more than one occasion. But as we mentioned, what we saw issue after these pieces of advice from Muhammad Hijāb was a very different Muhammad Hijāb. We saw this individual that puts across a persona of being humble and of loving to be rectified and loving change within himself. What we saw was this individual become overnight a venomous, vindictive, disrespectful, offensive, angry young man. And it is this that has caused him to embark upon this campaign that we now see that was and is an intentional smear campaign. And that is with his own admission that everything that he's doing in relation to speaking against Salafi publications of recent times and those who affiliate themselves with Salafi publications is an intentional smear campaign. And that is with his own admission, that he himself admits that it was something that was intentional. It was a strategic campaign, he says, that was intended to paint the Salafis and the people of Sunnah in a bad light. Doesn't sound like Muhammad Hijāb, does it? His followers, I'm sure, will be saying. Well, listen to this statement of Muhammad Hijāb.
And the last couple of weeks has been a
a strategic campaign that is embarked upon because of what we perceive to be. See, we hear again and other examples and more examples of him using and relying upon opinion, and based upon his opinion, not based upon scholarly advice, but based upon his opinion, he embarked upon this smear campaign that was intended. It was a strategic campaign and was intended to make the people of Sunnah and Salafiyah, and in particular our brothers at Salafi Publications, yani we at Salafi Publications, intended to make us look bad. That was something that he embarked upon, and he admits freely and openly that we will make you look bad, and we will hyperbolize the issues that have come from you and those things that we see. We will exaggerate those issues. And he said, but we won't lie. Well, I'll put it to you that an exaggeration of any issue is a form of lying. Listen to what he says here.
That we can do the same kind of thing. We won't lie about you. We will hyperbolize what you do, emphasize your mistakes, and make you look very bad.
We'll hyperbolize what you do. Yani, that is, we'll exaggerate it. And we'll make you look very bad. This is the statement of Muhammad Hijāb himself. We will make you look very bad. And again, I'll put it to you that it goes against the just persona that he tries to put across. It was an intentional campaign that he embarked upon to make the brothers at Salafi Publications look bad. But as we mentioned, all he's done is rejuvenate and regurgitate the arguments of those who have preceded him. Arguments, of course, that they, in an attempt to cause or to let the people accept those arguments, we hear statements such as, it is well known. Almost as though he and his ilk believe that as long as you say that enough, then enough people and a sufficient amount of people will accept what you say. Oh, it is well known. Come on, this is something that is well known. Everybody knows this is well known. And so you don't want to feel like a fool being ignorant about something that is well known. And so you accept that it must be well known. And that, of course, is a part of this smear campaign that he, as far as he's concerned, has won. As though this is some game. He mentions,
finally, the job has been done. I can confirm that after more than 500,000 views on YouTube, if you put all the videos together that relate to this, probably about 300,000 to 500,000 views on just YouTube, and then on Instagram and Twitter, all them things there, add it all up, maybe even 600,000 to 700,000 people it got to. And a lot of it was targeted views. It got to the people in the cult. We got the people at the cult. You don't know how many people getting at this cult, by the way, messaging us and telling us, you know what, we used to listen to these people, now we don't listen to them anymore. Those who were sympathizers to the cult, who could have potentially joined the cult, now we're getting reports, like a plethora of reports telling us we're no longer in the cult. We had nothing to lose, and you had everything to lose, and you lost.
so it was a big game. We had nothing to lose. You had everything to lose, and you lost, says our brother Muhammad. And this, of course, if it indicates anything, then it indicates an absence of ikhlas and sincerity in this campaign. It was just purely a campaign in order to smear our brothers and to make our brothers look bad. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is what you do, and so we want to do the same back to you. And our brother Muhammad, if we look at the methods and the manner in which he's dealt with this issue, he's been very, very disrespectful, and in many cases very, very immature. Disappointingly immature. And as far as him being disrespectful, then from those who advised him, our brother Dr. Amjad Rafiq Abu Iyad advised him in a number of articles, which had he read and had he reflected upon those articles, then he would observe that truly there are some issues that I need to take myself to account for. I need to look at, and I need to actually thank him for, rather than meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after having my followers follow me upon that which opposes what the prophets and messengers came with, then here is one that has advised me with that which by way of it I'll be able to correct myself before I meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is khayr. As Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned concerning those who he warns against, he said we are more beneficial to them than their mothers and fathers. We stop the people from following them upon their errors, and thus their sins are lightened Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so, as far as Muhammad Hijāb, then he wishes the people to stop following the brothers at Spobs, because as far as he is concerned, they are extreme. They're an extreme group who have gone way too far and need to be stopped. As far as the Salaf of this ummah is concerned, then if they were to, and if the scholars and the A'imma were to analyze the da'wah of those who are alongside or with Muhammad al-Hijāb or Muhammad Hijāb, and the da'wah of the brothers at Salafi publications, then there is no doubt that they would agree that the brothers and the da'wah of the brothers at Salafi publications is in line with that which the Salaf of this ummah was upon. Our da'wah revolves around a tasfiyah wa tarbiyah, that is, purifying the ranks of the Muslimin from that which has been added to it, and of course from ideas, from belief, from bid'ah, from innovation, and then nurturing them upon this pure, unadulterated deen. That was the methodology of the prophets and the messengers, and it was the methodology of the Salaf of this ummah. And thus we saw them having the strong position that they had in relation to innovation. Listen to this statement here of Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, وَاشْتَدَّ نَكِيرُ السَّلَفِ وَالْأَئِمَّةِ لِلْبِدْعَةِ وَصَاحُوا بِأَهْلِهَا مِنْ أَقْطَارِ الْأَرْضِ وحذروا فتنتهم أشد التحذير وبالغوا في ذلك بما لم يبالغوا في إنكار الفواحش والظلم والعدوان إذ مضرة البدعة وهدمها للدين ومنافاتها له أشد. He mentions rahimahullah ta'ala, as occurs in Madarij al-Salikin, he mentions that the warning of the Salaf and the A'imma, the great Imams, against bid'ah was severe, and they sahu, and he uses the term here sahu, which is that they raised their voices against its people from all of the corners of the globe. That is, the people of Sunnah everywhere. It wasn't just something that was focused upon a particular land or country. The people of Sunnah in every place did so. Now, it was not just Ikhwan against the Shia and against the Ahmadiyya, but against the people of innovation generally. He said, and they warned against their fitna with the most staunch warning, and they went to extremes in that regard, in that which they did not do in them making inkar and speaking out against fawahish, and against lewdness, against dhulm, oppression, and against udwan, transgression. Of course, they were staunch in warning against those things, but they were greater in warning against the affair of innovation. Why? He goes on to continue, because the harm of innovation and its destruction of the deen is, and its opposition to the deen is far greater. And so this statement of Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, who does it apply to? This statement of him saying that this was the way of the A'imma of the Salaf, the A'imma of the past, who is it that we should follow, Muhammad Hijāb, or this statement that Imam Ibn al-Qayyim informs us of concerning the A'imma of the past, the Imams of the Salaf? And when we're speaking about the Salaf, we're speaking about the first three generations of Muslimin, Sahaba, Tabi'in, Atba' Tabi'in. Who has most right to be followed? And so we saw when he was advised in relation to these affairs, rather than accepting the advice, as we see him accepting the advice of Ahlul Bid'ati wal Dalala, from the Shia and from the Ahmadiyya and even from the atheists, when he debates him in the park, rather than being humble, which is what he should do. If anyone is going to be humble for and to, it should be those who advise him with the Sunnah, rather than that we saw him doing the exact opposite. And as we mentioned, being extremely disrespectful, and in doing so, losing a large number of his followers. From his disrespect, as we mentioned, the disrespect that he levied against the likes of our brother, Dr. Amjad Rafiq, Abu Iyad. He began, after Abu Iyad began to address some of his issues in articles, he began to refer to him as Milkshake, or began to refer to him as Calcium Kid, or allowed from his followers, without rebuking or correcting them, allowed them to use a term that he uses, boy, 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 boy. And they were allowed to do so. For someone who has, and may possibly be, in fact is, old enough to be his father. Abu Iyad is slightly older than myself. My son Hakeem, when Muhammad Hijāb was born, the day Muhammad Hijāb was born, my son Hakeem was 7 months old. And Abu Iyad, Amjad Rafiq, is slightly older than myself. And so we're speaking about someone who's old enough to be his father. And so we saw, and we continue to see, huge disrespect. And he continues to make mockery of those who have advised him on Twitter. Milkshake, I've benefited greatly from Milkshake and other than that. And we likewise saw him embark upon a journalistic mission wherein he advised, or when he sought rather the advice of individuals who, as far as he was concerned, had valid gripes with the brothers at Salafi Publications. Of course, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so he goes and he interviews these individuals with a journalistic style, interviewing as though, and you would believe, he worked for Panorama. But what he failed to employ in these journalistic interviews were the core principles of journalism. Since it is that he doesn't accept the advice that is related to the Sunnah, then at least hold on to the principles of journalism if you want to make yourself a journalist. What were the core principles, and what are the core principles of journalism? They mention truth and accuracy. And that is what you say is true and as accurate as one may possibly deduct. That was not what we saw with the journalism of Muhammad Hijāb. Rather, what we saw was kadhib, lies, fabrications, exaggerations, just as he said, that we're going to exaggerate the truth and we're going to hyperbolize that which has come from you and we're going to make you look bad. Nah. And that is exactly what he embarked upon doing. And that is by bending and by twisting statements and by exaggerating statements and sometimes just outright lying. 2, that they mention from the core principles of journalism is independence. And that is that you do not lean towards a particular view or a body who may, for example, be biased in relation to what it is you're investigating. 3, fairness and impartiality. And 4, humanity. That is that you should not be hurtful in relation to what you convey. And all we have seen is him attempting his hardest not to do as our brothers who were upon the da'wah and upon the sunnah do, which is to convey realities. Rather, he just gone upon a smear campaign with a clear intent of trying to be hurtful as possible. And even offending and being disrespectful to the wives of some of our brothers. Some of those statements he realized went far below the belt, and so he took some of them back. But why would he utter them in the first place? A person of taqwa and piety, and a person who tries to be a person of truth, apparently. And 5thly, accountability. That is what the journalists they mention. And when we're looking at accountability, of course, we're speaking of and looking at accountability in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. that can you be accountable? Are you able to truly give an account for that which you have been mentioning? And that truly, this is a true state and a true account of what actually happened. And not that these individuals are exaggerating truths or lying or hyperbolizing as you yourself accept you wish to embark upon that mission. And so we see him interviewing certain individuals. He interviews Abu Hakeem al-Dhahabi. He interviews Abdul Haq Baker. He interviews some guy called Bilal in Canada. And we also hear him calling us to certain individuals, Zakir Naik. We hear him calling us to Mufti Menk. We hear him calling us to Nu'man Ali Khan, which is ironic, since his call and his smear campaign revolved around the brothers who were upon the dawah, wish nothing more and intend nothing more than to capitalize financially. It's just money that they're after. Secondly, women. And it is well known. Of course, we hear this being a phrase that is oft repeated. It is well known that these brothers marry and divorce and marry and divorce and marry and divorce, to the extent that he claims that some of them have had 50 or 60 marriages. Oh, but we're not going to mention them. We're not going to go into that. 50 or 60 marriages. Again, I repeat, we're going to hyperbolize and we're going to exaggerate. We're going to make you look bad. 50 or 60 marriages, ya Muhammad. Billahi alaykum. And likewise, power. And these are his claims against the brothers who are upon the dawah, which is, subhanAllah, ironic. He interviews, and of course one of his issues in relation to money is this issue of taking prevent money, which incidentally we have, and we wish that Muhammad Hijāb would present to us what is haram about doing so. Not that Salafi publications have taken prevent money. And we are categorically clear about mentioning that. Salafi publications have never taken prevent money. But what is haram about doing so? What is haram about taking prevent money? Does he have some fatwa from somebody from Ahl al-Ilm in that regard? And so if it is not haram, and it is not haram, then why would he raise that even as an issue? Because of the fact that it is a smokescreen. But as we mentioned, money, women, power, and fame. This is what he claims, but it is ironic that the people that he interviews and the people that he calls to are those who he interviews and those who he calls to. He interviews Abu Hakeem al-Dhahabi. He interviews Abdul Haq Baker. He interviews some guy called Bilal. He calls us to Zakir Naik. He calls us to Nu'man Ali Khan. And then he tells us about money, women, and power. The irony. In any case, Muhammad Hijāb, he started this campaign and he intends to make the brothers at Salafi publications look bad. That is what we hear him mentioning. And that is because of the fact that they are upon a tabdi'i. He mentions a tabdi'i campaign, a tabdi'i project. They just want to make everybody mubtadi'ah, people of innovation. That is the only thing that they're concerned with. But as we no doubt will mention, and it is a reality, that again is ironic, since Muhammad attempts to paint the brothers at Salafi publications as individuals who do nothing but destroy, and that is a destructive da'wah, and when if you look at their communities, they are the ones that are building masajid. They are the ones that are increasing in giving regular durus, regular lessons, teaching and nurturing the books of the Salaf. They are the ones that are giving the true da'wah to the kuffar and actually having people embrace like our brothers at CC Dawah, who have an international Dawah campaign to non-Muslims. They were the ones that you saw going to New Zealand after the bombing. They were the ones that were recently in Northern Ireland and elsewhere giving Dawah and actually receiving shahadas. It is Salafi publications that spreads and translates the books of the Salaf, those books that are beneficial to you, those books that will cause you not to need the brothers at Salafi publications at all. Nurture you upon the principles of the Salaf, that you may be a person who walks upon the face of the earth upon basira. While if you look at these YouTube personalities, if you look at those individuals whose dawah revolves around numbers, and as we hear him saying 500,000 views and this so many thousand views, and we won and you lost, their dawah revolves around purely follow me. And the reality is, if the internet was turned off tomorrow, the dawah of Muhammad Hijāb would die. No duroos, no masajid, no marakiz, no kutub. His dawah would die. Yet, when he debates the people of innovation, from the Shia, from the worst of the people of innovation, Shia, Ahmadiyya, mashallah, smiles and jokes and respect and honor. But the people of Sunnah are not able to get any of that from Muhammad Hijāb. And so what we're going to look at, Ikhwan, in the next number of sittings is we're going to look at what are and what were the issues actually. Muhammad Hijāb can continue to present his smoke screen, but what we're going to look at is the actual issues. What was it that the brothers have raised about the dawah of Muhammad Hijāb? What is philosophical about his dawah? How is Muhammad Hijāb ikhwani in his approach and in his methodology? How has he opposed the dawah of the prophets and the messengers? We're going to look at that in the parts that are to come, bi'idhnillah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad.